Well, hello there. Brent here with Bring Your Own Tools. On today's episode, we are building an outdoor sofa set. If you want to learn how to do it, keep on watching. Let's get started. This project, of course, starts with lumber, and there's only two different types of lumber we'll be using for this project. This one specifically is a 4" by 1" cedar decking boards that I picked up at my local Home Depot. So, it was expensive, but you know what? I found the perfect solution for it because we're actually using cedar decking boards. Now these decking boards are 16 feet long and they're $25 a piece, but that's actually a good deal these days. So this is going to be a perfect product to use, not only because they're sturdy, but they also do very well in the elements. So win-win-win. Let's start cutting the rest. Now, because I want our sofa area to be as long as possible, I cut these boards right in the middle and then cut off both ends, which gives us exactly 8-foot long strips. These boards are going to be the basis for the bench that we're going to be sitting on, as well as the backrest. And because I want all of these boards to be in a cohesive layout, as well as attached together, we grab our pocket hole jig. Now, if you haven't used one of these before, do not worry because they're extremely easy to use. All you need to do is make sure that the gray tab on the back end is up against the end of your board, then clamp it down tight and set the drill bit that comes with the kit to the right length and just drill till it hits the collar. Extremely quick, extremely easy, and quite satisfying because you get perfect holes afterwards. Now, because we obviously have to screw into something, I cut 24" long boards for the seating area and 20" boards for the backrest. One thing to keep in mind though, before you start assembly, is to actually cut off a small slice on one specific side. Now, I'm doing this because these boards have radius corners, and if we didn't do this, then you'd have a small gap between your end boards and your horizontal slats. As for fasteners, we are using an 1¼ inch fastener that is specifically designed for this Craig jig system. These are also specifically used for interior and exterior use. That's important. Unless you want these fasteners to rust on you, which I don't. Now, once I have my first board installed, I determined how much spacing I need between each board and just divvy it up. This doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it should be pretty close, and luckily for us, this was very easy because we had a perfect 1/2 inch of spacing between every single board. There's obviously a number of different ways that we could have fastened these boards together or glued them together, but this type of system really does an amazing job at hiding those fasteners, or at least keeping them out of eyesight, which is really eye appealing and catching even if you see the holes on the back side. It's just a very nice and professional way of installing all of these boards accurately and appropriately that gives you an extremely strong hold in the end. Oh, and remember, if you do like any of the materials or tools that I feature in this video, I will make sure and leave a link in the description box below. Now that we have all of our panels fabricated, it's now time to fabricate our leg supports. Now, for these leg supports, we are using Douglas fir 4x4s, and I completely designed this style myself. I felt this layout would provide plenty of support as well as an eye-catching style in the end. I'm just going to run through exactly how I cut each piece, and then just know that we just did this 8 different times. The first cut we made was at a 45-degree angle, and the next cut is going to be also at a 45-degree angle in the opposite direction. Just note that the face measurement should be approximately 16¼ inches. Once we have our second cut taken care of, I then measure 23 inches, make a mark, and then set the angle of my chop saw to 15 degrees. Now we're doing 15 degrees instead of a true 90 because we want an angle for our backrest. If it was just a straight 90, then our back would be fully straight, which is never comfortable to lay on. Now that we have our third cut taken care of, we can move on to our fourth. And with our fourth, we are also measuring 23 inches from that end specifically, but instead of angling that cut at the opposite direction, we are angling it at the same direction, but we're making it a 45-degree angle. On a side note, I do know that this might be a little bit confusing to understand, so I am thinking about creating plans for this layout. If you'd like to see plans for this outdoor sofa set, let me know in the comments below because I am interested. On our fifth and final cut, I'm measuring 38 inches, and the 38-inch mark really is because we ran out of room, but in all honesty, it worked out absolutely at the perfect length for this project. This is extremely nice because this means we have minimal waste for every single board we use, and with lumber prices these days, that goes a long way. As for assembling each leg system together, I found that the easiest way was to actually install a brace in the middle. Now this brace is 9¼ inches long, fastened it to the table so it's not going anywhere. I then clamp all three pieces that I cut first together with using those mitered corners, which makes assembly very easy and quick. Once I have all three boards at the right locations, I then install a couple finished screws that are specifically for exterior use. That will just tack these mitered corners in place, add a bit of strength, but specifically will hold these mitered corners in place as I install these long lag screws. I suggest pre-drilling your hole first and then installing your lag screw. And this specific screw is a Timber Lock 6-inch screw from Fasten Master. They're extremely strong and durable, which is perfect for this application. Once I fasten both sides in place, I then remove the clamps and position it on the opposite side. I then grab the 38-inch long piece that I cut, pre-drilled my holes, and I do take a 1/2-inch drill bit and pre-drill the top of the hole first, then pre-drill with a smaller drill bit, insert our screw. That way the installation is much easier, as well as you don't see the bolt where 1, it becomes more of an eyesore, and 2, it will get in the way once it comes time for full assembly. I install one last large lag screw in the bottom back corner. That way the entire system is fully attached to itself. Just you might have to back out one screw because it might be a little tight on our stationary brace, but easy to back out one screw, reinstall it, and move on to your next leg assembly. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Once you have all 8 of them fully assembled, you can proceed to some sanding. Now the sanding isn't major on this project because we're going to be using a bit of fire in the very near future, but I do want to clean up all my mitered corners and edges around the entire structure because that's just going to give us a nicer, more quality finish in the end. I'm using 150 grit sandpaper over the entire surface, and the one nice thing about sanding process is the fact that you don't really have to worry about swirl marks in this case. On some of the sharper edges, I do take a sanding pad with 150 grit sandpaper and smooth down those edges by hand because I do want to get a nice soft smooth feel at those locations prior to applying our fire. And speaking of fire, let's get to that. Now that was a lot of sanding, and that was quite a bit of work, but guess what? Luckily for us, the hard work is over because now we can get to the fun stuff, which includes fire. We're gonna do a little show sugibon on all of these frames because of the fact that they're Douglas fir. If we heat treat them, they're gonna last longer, especially in the Pacific Northwest. So let's have a little fun with fire. To torch all of our beautiful leg assemblies, we are using a 500,000 BTU outdoor torch. This torch is a perfect way to apply our show sugibon to all of these frames quickly and nicely. Now all I'm doing is going over every single corner just to ensure we have a nice quality char on all sides of the frame. We're not trying to chart too much where we're creating a large amount of alligator skin. It's just trying to darken it up to that point where it's fully blacked versus the white Douglas fir. And I don't want to see too much difference in the grain structure. It should be a nice consistent black, at least as much as possible. With any project with fire, you do have to be careful, so just know that I do have a fire extinguisher as well as a hose close by. We all want a controlled burn at the BYOT workshop. Now I torched all of our timbers, let them rest for approximately a half an hour, then came back to them and started removing all the excess char off of all of the wood. We're removing all of the excess char with a stiff bristle brush, which is extremely easy to remove and actually kind of satisfying. I don't know why, but for some reason removing this thin layer of char just is really satisfying, especially when you see the beautiful finish in the end. Key note on this one is to make sure you're wearing a proper respirator as well as eye protection. You do not want any of this stuff breathed in or in your eyes because that's just not going to make this job go any quicker or easier. You do want to remove all this excess char because if you don't, it's just going to get everywhere and it's not going to look good, especially when you start applying your finish. And speaking of finish, let's get to that. For a beautiful outdoor finish, there's a number of products to use, but for this specific project, we are using linseed oil and I'm mixing it in with some mineral spirits. Now we're using a mixture because we want to have this oil penetrate evenly and deeply, and the linseed oil is a very thick product and you want to thin it out a bit so it actually can absorb into the wood easier. And with mineral spirits specifically, it's very nice because it does easily thin out the linseed oil, but it evaporates very quickly, so what's left is your beautiful linseed oil finish. I'm applying with your generic paintbrush because it's really easy to get into all of those small cracks and crevices, and you really want to do a good job at having all sides be fully applied with your finish. I apply this to all 8 leg assemblies, let it dry out, and if there is any excess later on, you can wipe it off. Just know that you probably won't have too much to wipe off because these boards are dry. As I let our leg assemblies soak in the finish, it's time to finish our cedar panels. On the very ends of each board, I take a round over bit just to smooth out those edges so it has the same profile as the straight runs. But once that's taken care of, I take my sander with 200 grit sandpaper and go over all of the front and back surfaces. This sanding process really is very quick and easy because of the fact that these boards already come pre-sanded, so they come with a very smooth finish. I'm just giving it an extra little bit, especially after all the work that we've done to them thus far. After I sand all the sides with my random orbital sander, I do take a piece of sandpaper and sand down the perimeter of our panels just to get that perfect buttery smooth finish in the end. Now before we apply our finish, I do take a tack cloth to these panels and go over both the front and the back side in order to get all that small dust particles that the sanding process left behind. Then once we have that taken care of, I do take a fresh bowl and mix up a fresh batch of our linseed oil as well as our mineral spirits. Once we have that mixed up thoroughly, I can start applying it to our boards. And for the application process, I do apply it to the back side first, trying to get into all those small tight-knit crevices, and then flip it over and apply it to the front side. That way, once I have it applied to both sides, I can then flip it over onto its back side and start removing all the excess finish. And for the removal of the finish, all I'm using is a lint-free cloth that can easily be thrown away. However, key note and important note, apparently linseed oil, if left in a rag in an open area, especially when it's hot out, can spontaneously combust. Yes, that's a big deal. So make sure you submerge your cloths in water after you use them and then follow the instructions on proper procedure of throwing them away, because no one wants any of these rags to spontaneously combust on them in their shop. That would not be fun. After we apply our finish to all of our boards properly, I let them dry out in the sun for a little while, and guess what? It's time for assembly. I lay out the legs based on where I generally think they're going to go. Just know that each assembly section will get 4 legs, and therefore because these sections are approximately 8 feet long, there'll be 2 feet of space between each leg. For a bit of extra waterproofing protection, you can put on a furniture wax. Now this wax is from walrus oil, and I'm applying it to areas, especially the areas that I can't get to after I have everything fully assembled, and therefore this will provide a bit more of waterproofing protection for all that moisture that will be coming eventually to the greater Seattle area. I also apply this product with a lint-free cloth, and once we have that taken care of, we can start our assembly process. I grab our first board, lay it right on top of the seating area, and try and lay out exactly where the two ends of the legs are going to be placed. I then take my construction square, determine where center of our leg assembly is, and then punch small divots into our cedar boards at every single fastener location that I want. This not only helps with determining the exact location and spacing that you want for each fastener, but it also provides a perfectly straight line so you don't have any weird cattywampus layouts for those fasteners because you want it nice and straight. Does anyone use the term cattywampus anymore? I really don't use it very often, but it is fun to say. Anyways, moving on. I secure both end legs first, then evenly space out the two remaining legs, fasten those down, and we can proceed to positioning and installing our back panel. For the back panel, I do want it approximately 4 inches taller than the very bottom. That way we have a nice gap at the bottom and the tops of our legs don't protrude past our panel. I secured this panel exactly the same way that I secured the previous panel by using my construction square to help me lay out exactly where the fasteners need to go while keeping the fasteners straight, and then securing the two ends first and then the middle sections after that. Once the first one's taken care of, proceed to the second, and the nice thing is that it's the same exact process. So get those fasteners installed, and guess what? We are done. I absolutely love how these benches turned out. They're beautiful, they're supportive, they're even comfortable even though that they're wood. But if you like cushions, I did pick up some beautiful outdoor cushions that I picked up on Amazon, and I'll make sure and leave a link for these as well. Plus, considering the fact that any good quality outdoor furniture set is thousands of dollars these days, means that we actually saved money on this project. And that's what I call one beautiful, sexy beast. Oh yeah, I feel like I need a fire pit. That gives me an idea.